They called themselves the apex of galactic civilization, masters of energy manipulation, time distortion, and reality bending. For millennia, the Galactic Council had maintained order across 10,000 star systems, their wisdom unchallenged, their authority absolute, until they discovered Earth. The first probe sent to monitor the small blue planet never returned. The second vanished without a trace. By the time the Council realized they weren't dealing with primitive cave dwellers wielding sticks and stones, humanity had already begun to spread. What the Council found wasn't a species begging for guidance or cowering before superior technology. Instead, they discovered creatures so fundamentally dangerous that for the first time in their existence, the most powerful beings in the galaxy found themselves afraid. Now, as human ships appear in systems the Council thought unreachable, as their impossible technology rewrites the laws of physics, the galaxy's rulers face an unprecedented crisis. How do you negotiate with a species that doesn't just break your rules? They don't even acknowledge they exist. The Council chambers that once echoed with confident proclamations now whispered desperate questions. What are these humans? How do they advance so quickly? And, most terrifying of all, can they be stopped? Some say humanity is evolution's greatest mistake. Others believe they're its greatest masterpiece. But one thing is certain, the galaxy will never be the same again. Welcome to the day the predators learned what it means to be prey. Ambassador Zethkar had lived for 3,000 years, witnessed the rise and fall of 17 civilizations, and personally negotiated the surrender of 47 hostile species. Nothing in his extensive experience had prepared him for this moment. The human sat across from him in the Council chambers, completely relaxed in a chair designed to intimidate. Dr. Sarah Chun, Earth's first official representative to the Galactic Council, looked remarkably ordinary for someone who had just fundamentally altered the balance of power in known space. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore what humans called business attire, a far cry from the elaborate ceremonial garments favored by other species. "You seem nervous, Ambassador," Chin observed, her voice carrying a hint of amusement that made Zethkar's 4 hearts skip in unison. Nervous? The Grand Ambassador of the Galactic Council. Nervous. If any other species had suggested such a thing, they would have found themselves on the wrong end of a stellar bombardment. But these weren't just any other species. These were humans. Dr. Chun, Zethkar began, his translator struggling with the subtle harmonics of his native language. Perhaps we should discuss the incidents. Chun leaned forward slightly, her expression shifting from casual interest to something far more focused. Which incidents would those be? The mining platforms that mysteriously went dark in the Kepler system? The patrol fleets that reported massive energy signatures before losing contact? Or are you referring to the dimensional rifts your scientists insist are impossible? The chamber fell silent. Representatives from 12 major civilizations, beings who commanded star-spanning empires, sat frozen as this single human casually listed their most classified intelligence failures. Zitkar's mandibles clicked nervously. 3 months ago, the Council had been preparing to issue a standard integration protocol for Earth. Humanity would be granted limited space travel, supervised development assistance, and a junior seat in galactic affairs, the same treatment given to every emerging species for the past 10 millennia. Then, the humans had politely declined. "We appreciate the offer," their initial response had read, "but we'll handle our own development. Thank you." The Council had found it amusing. How could a species that had barely achieved faster-than-light travel possibly manage independent space colonization? Their longest space journey had been to their own moon for cosmic sake. The idea that they could pose any threat to established galactic powers was laughable. The laughter had stopped when human vessels began appearing in systems that should have been unreachable. Dr. Chen, interjected Counselor Vexnari, her crystalline form shimmering with barely contained energy. "Our sensors detected human ships in the Andromeda terminus yesterday. That system is 73,000 light-years from Earth. Our fastest vessels require 2 years to make that journey. Chen nodded politely. Yes, we've established several research outposts there. Beautiful nebulae in that region. Our scientists are quite excited about the exotic matter readings. The casual tone sent ripples of unease through the assembled representatives. Counselor Mordeath, whose species had achieved interstellar travel when humans were still developing agriculture, leaned forward with unconcealed concern. "Ow," he demanded. "Our physicists have confirmed that faster-than-light travel is limited by quantum resonance barriers. The mathematics are absolute." "Your mathematics?" Chun corrected gently. "We found that reality tends to be more flexible than most species assume." Zethkar felt a chill run down his segmented spine. He had seen the classified reports, read the analysis from their best scientific minds. Human ships didn't travel faster than light. They ignored the speed of light entirely. Somehow, impossibly, they had developed technology that treated the fundamental laws of physics as mere suggestions. "Dr. Chun," he said carefully, "the Council has certain concerns about rapid expansion without proper oversight. Throughout history, species that advance too quickly often become unstable. We've seen worlds tear themselves apart when they gain power beyond their wisdom." Chin's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes grew colder. "Ambassador, are you threatening us?" "Not threatening," Zethkar assured her quickly, offering guidance. "The Council has maintained peace for over 10,000 years by ensuring that no single species develops capabilities that could destabilize the galactic community." "I see." Chun stood and walked to the chamber's massive viewing port, which displayed a real-time image of the galaxy. "And how exactly do you maintain this stability?" The question hung in the air like a weapon waiting to discharge. Everyone in the chamber knew the answer, but none dared speak it aloud. "The Council maintained peace through overwhelming force, carefully managed scarcity, and the absolute certainty that resistance meant annihilation." Counselor Zarthek, his metallic frame clicking with agitation, finally broke the silence. "When necessary, we intervene to prevent dangerous technologies from proliferating. We have a responsibility to protect all galactic civilizations." "Ah," Chin said softly. The Kethmoran incident. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop 10 degrees. The Kethmoran incident was classified at the highest levels, known only to the Council's inner circle. An entire species had been quietly eliminated when they developed weapons technology deemed too dangerous for galactic stability. "How do you know about?" Vexnari began. "We know many things," Chin interrupted. "We know about the forced relocations, the strategic resource restrictions, the carefully orchestrated natural disasters that befell species who questioned Council authority. We know about the monitoring stations hidden in supposedly uninhabited systems, the sleeper agents embedded in planetary governments, the kill switches built into every piece of technology you've ever shared." She turned from the viewing port to face them, and for a moment, Zethkar saw something in her expression that made his ancient warrior's instincts scream warnings. "We know because we've been watching us for quite some time now." The implications hit the Council members like a physical blow. If humans had been aware of galactic surveillance from the beginning, if they had been deliberately concealing their capabilities while studying Council methods. 3 months ago, Chin continued conversationally, "you activated Protocol 7 against us. 12 stealth destroyers, equipped with planet crackers, positioned around our solar system. The plan was to deliver an ultimatum: submit to Council authority or face extinction." Zethkar's blood turned to ice. Protocol 7 was the Council's most classified contingency plan, known only to a handful of individuals. The fact that humans not only knew about it, but had allowed it to proceed meant. "Where are those ships now?" Mordet whispered. Chun smiled, and the expression was somehow more terrifying than any snarl or battle cry. "They're perfectly safe. We've relocated them to a pocket dimension while we decide what to do with them. The crews are unharmed, though they're probably wondering why their instruments show they're floating in a universe that doesn't exist." "Impossible, Vexnari breted." Dimensional manipulation on that scale would require energy output equivalent to a main sequence star. Your science is based on scarcity thinking, Chen explained patiently. You assume that energy is limited, that matter is fixed, that the laws of physics are restrictions rather than starting points. Humans have a different perspective. She gestured toward the viewing port. What do you see when you look at the galaxy? A vast collection of resources to be managed, Zethkar answered automatically. It was the foundational principle of council philosophy. The galaxy as a closed system requiring careful oversight. We see unlimited potential waiting to be unlocked, Chun said. Every star is a fusion reactor that could power impossible dreams. Every black hole is a gateway to energies your scientists have never imagined. Every quantum field is a tool for reshaping reality itself. The human walked back to her chair and sat down, her movements casual despite the growing horror on the faces around her. The Council believes that advanced civilizations inevitably become threats, she said. That power corrupts, that capability breeds aggression, that the only safe species is a controlled species. Your entire philosophy is based on fear, fear that someone might develop something you can't understand or contain. Counselor Thexarun, who had remained silent throughout the exchange, finally spoke. His species were among the galaxy's most advanced, masters of genetic engineering and biological warfare. Are you saying humans feel no aggression? That power hasn't affected your society. Chen's laugh was genuinely warm. Oh, we're plenty aggressive. Humans have been fighting wars for our entire recorded history. We've mastered every conceivable form of violence, created weapons that could glass worlds, and developed strategies that would make your military analysts weep. The council members shifted uncomfortably, but Chen wasn't finished. The difference is, we fight each other, not other species. Our wars taught us something your peace never could, how to push boundaries without breaking them. Every human conflict forced us to innovate, to adapt, to find solutions that seemed impossible. We learned to turn our destructive impulses into constructive competition. And now? Zethkar asked, dreading the answer. Now we're bored with fighting ourselves, Chin said simply. We've solved scarcity, eliminated involuntary death, and discovered that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than we ever imagined. We're ready for bigger challenges. She leaned back in her chair, and for the first time, Zethkar saw past her diplomatic facade to the predator beneath. The Council has been the apex predator in this galaxy for 10,000 years, she said softly. That's about to change. The question is, do we make this transition peacefully, or do you force us to demonstrate why that wouldn't be wise? The chamber fell into absolute silence. For 10 millennia, the Council had been the ones making such ultimatums. Now, for the first time in galactic history, they found themselves on the receiving end, and they had no idea how to respond. The emergency session convened 6 hours after Dr. Chen's departure. The Council's inner sanctum, a chamber that had hosted the galaxy's most critical decisions for millennia, buzzed with unprecedented anxiety. Holographic displays showed real-time intelligence reports from across known space, each one more disturbing than the last. Fleet Admiral Kexthara materialized in the center of the chamber, her energy form crackling with agitation. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, she announced without preamble. Human vessels have appeared in 17 additional systems since the ambassadors' meeting. They're not following any known travel patterns or hyperspace routes. Supreme Counselor Yethmaran, oldest and most experienced member of the Council, activated his personal display. The three-dimensional map of the galaxy rotated slowly, red dots indicating human presence spreading like an infection through supposedly secure space. Show them the Vorthan incident, he commanded. The display shifted, focusing on a remote system where the Council maintained a classified research facility. Admiral Kexthara's form dimmed slightly as she began her report. At 0347 Standard Time, our deep space monitors detected a massive energy signature approaching the Vorthan system. Initial readings suggested a fleet of capital ships, but visual confirmation showed only a single human vessel. The recording began to play. Council members watched in growing alarm as a sleek ship, impossibly small compared to their massive dreadnoughts, approached their research station. The facility's defensive systems activated automatically. Gravitational disruptors, quantum torpedo batteries, and reality anchors designed to prevent dimensional incursions. The human ship didn't slow down, Kextara continued. Our weapons fired at maximum capacity. Direct hits were confirmed across all spectrums. On the display, brilliant energy bursts surrounded the human vessel. Any council ship would have been vaporized instantly. Instead, the human craft continued its approach, completely unaffected. "Ow," whispered Counselor Nexvala. "Our quantum torpedoes can destabilize molecular bonds across multiple dimensions." "The energy was absorbed," Kextara replied grimly. "Somehow, they converted our weapons' fire into additional power for their systems. Our attack made them stronger." The recording continued. The human ship reached the research station and stopped. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then, without warning, the massive facility simply vanished. "Gone," Kextara said unnecessarily. "No explosion, no debris field. Our entire research complex, along with 300 scientists and support staff, was relocated somewhere else. The humans left behind a message buoy." She gestured, and text appeared on the display. "Your people are safe and will be returned once we've reviewed your research. Some of your experiments were unnecessarily cruel. We've provided better facilities for your test subjects. Please be more considerate in the future." Earth Diplomatic Corps. The silence that followed was deafening. The Vorthan facility had been conducting classified experiments on captured specimens from dozens of species. The fact that humans had not only penetrated their security, but were now auditing their research methods was beyond humiliating. It was terrifying. "They're treating us like children," Counselor Mordeth observed, his voice tight with suppressed rage. "As if we need their permission to conduct legitimate scientific research." "Were the experiments legitimate?" Dr. Chin's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Every head turned toward the entrance. Somehow, impossibly, the human ambassador had appeared in their most secure location without triggering any alarms. She stood calmly near the chamber's entrance, hands clasped behind her back, as if she'd been invited. "Security," Yethmiron barked. "They can't hear you," Chin said pleasantly. "Don't worry, they're perfectly safe. We've simply created a localized temporal bubble around this chamber. From their perspective, this conversation will take about 3 seconds." Admiral Kextara's energy form flared with combat readiness. "You violated the most sacred laws of diplomacy. This is an act of war." Chun tilted her head slightly. "Is it? You've been monitoring our communications, infiltrating our governments, and positioning weapons around our home planet. By your own standards, we should have glassed your core worlds months ago." She walked further into the chamber, and council members instinctively backed away. There was nothing threatening about her movements, but something primal in their evolutionary programming recognized a superior predator. "The Vorthan experiments," Chun continued, "involved intentionally torturing sentient beings to study pain responses across different species. Your researchers were particularly interested in how long various creatures could remain conscious while being dissected. Those subjects were criminals," Vexnari protested. "Individuals condemned by their own societies." "A 7-year-old Zalani child was condemned by her society?" Chen asked quietly. "For what crime exactly?" "Being born with telepathic abilities that her species feared." The accusation hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Several council members shifted uncomfortably, unwilling to meet the human's gaze. "You see," Chen said, settling into one of the chamber's chairs as if she belonged there. "This is why we can't allow the council to continue operating as it has. You've become so focused on maintaining control that you've lost sight of basic morality." Supreme Counselor Yethmiron drew himself to his full height, his ancient authority radiating through the chamber. Morality is a luxury. Human. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Order requires harsh decisions. Whose order? Chen challenged. Order for whom? You've created a system where 12 species control the fate of billions, where technological advancement is artificially limited, where entire civilizations exist at your sufferance. That's not order. That's tyranny with better public relations. And what would you have us do? Demanded more death. Release all technological restrictions? Allow every species to develop world-ending weapons? The chaos would be unimaginable. Chun smiled, and several council members actually flinched. That's exactly what we suggest. Complete technological freedom, unrestricted development, and an end to artificial scarcity. Impossible. Fexvarun's biological form rippled with agitation. Advanced weapons in primitive hands would lead to genocide on a galactic scale. Only if you assume that advancement inevitably leads to destruction, Chen replied. That's projection, counselor. Your species developed advanced technology and used it to dominate others, so you assume everyone else will do the same. She gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the chamber's center. It showed Earth, but not as the council knew it. Instead of a single world, they saw a planet surrounded by massive orbital structures, space elevators reaching toward distant moons, and energy collectors drawing power directly from their sun. Humans achieved post-scarcity economics 47 years ago, Chen explained. We solved poverty, hunger, and resource competition through technology, not conquest. When basic needs are guaranteed and unlimited energy is available, the primary motivations for war disappear. The display shifted, showing other human colonies. Worlds that have been transformed into gardens, space habitats that housed billions in comfort beyond anything the Council had achieved, and technologies that seemed to bend the fundamental laws of nature. You're lying, whispered Nexvala. The energy requirements alone would be impossible. We extract energy from quantum foam, Chun said casually. Virtual particle pairs, zero-point fields, dimensional boundaries. The universe is practically overflowing with power once you learn to access it properly. We could provide unlimited energy to every species in the galaxy. Why? Yethmiran's question was barely audible. Because we can, Chen replied simply. Because suffering is inefficient. Because a galaxy full of thriving civilizations would be far more interesting than one where most species are artificially held back. Admiral Kextara's form flickered with disbelief. You're proposing to uplift the entire galaxy? To share advanced technology with species you've never even met? We've been doing it already, Chen admitted. The Rigel colonies received new agricultural techniques that increased their food production by 300%. The Centauri mining guilds have been using our improved gravity manipulation to extract resources without environmental damage. The Tau Ceti communications array is now running on clean fusion reactors we provided anonymously. The implications hit the Council like a cascade failure. If humans were already sharing advanced technology throughout the galaxy, if they were solving problems the Council claimed were unsolvable, you're undermining everything we've built, more death accused. We're fixing what you broke, Chen corrected. The artificial limitations you've imposed have caused more suffering than any natural disaster. Species dying of preventable diseases because you won't share medical technology. Civilizations trapped in poverty because you control access to advanced manufacturing. Entire worlds struggling with energy crises while you hoard fusion technology. She stood and walked to the chamber's great viewing port, looking out at the galaxy beyond. The Council believes in management through scarcity, she said. Keep resources limited, control access to technology, ensure that species remain dependent. It's effective for maintaining power, but it's a moral abomination. And humans have never sought power? Vexnari challenged. Your own history is filled with conquest and domination. Absolutely, Chun agreed. We were terrible to each other for most of our existence. But we learned from our mistakes instead of institutionalizing them. The display changed again, showing human historical conflicts. Wars, genocide, slavery. The darkest chapters of humanity's past played out in stark detail. Every atrocity you see taught us something, Chun continued. Every failure showed us what not to repeat. We evolved beyond our destructive impulses because we faced them honestly instead of pretending they didn't exist. You expect us to believe that an entire species simply chose to abandon conquest. Admiral Kextara's skepticism was evident. Not abandoned, redirected, Chun clarified. Humans are still competitive, still aggressive, still driven to excel. But we compete to solve problems, not create them. We fight diseases instead of each other. We conquer ignorance rather than territory. She turned back to face the council, and her expression had shifted from diplomatic politeness to something far more intense. "Here's what's going to happen," she said, her voice carrying an authority that made the chamber's ancient acoustics ring. "The council will dissolve its current power structure. Technological restrictions will be lifted immediately. The secret weapons programs, the surveillance networks, the fear-based control systems, all of it ends now. You're demanding our surrender," Yethmiran stated flatly. "I'm offering you redemption," Chun replied. "The choice is yours, but understand this. The age of galactic tyranny is over. Humanity has already won this war. We're simply deciding how many of you survive the transition." The threat was delivered so calmly, so matter-of-factly, that it took several seconds for its full meaning to register. You would commit genocide to impose your vision of paradise. Fexvarun's biological form had gone completely still. "We would prevent genocide to create something better," Chun said. "The Council has maintained power through the threat of annihilation for 10,000 years. Every species in the galaxy lives with the knowledge that one wrong move could mean extinction. That ends now." She moved toward the chamber's exit, then paused at the threshold. "You have 72 hours to begin dismantling your control systems," she announced. "After that, we'll dismantle them for you. I strongly recommend cooperation. Our methods are far less disruptive when we have your willing assistance." And with that, she was gone, leaving behind a chamber full of beings who had just realized that the age of their absolute power had come to an end. The 72-hour deadline approached like an inevitable asteroid impact. Across the galaxy, emergency sessions convened, fleet commanders prepared for the unthinkable, and ancient alliances crumbled under the weight of desperate self-preservation. In the Nexus system, home to the Council's primary military installation, Fleet Admiral Kextara stood before the largest gathering of warships in galactic history. 700 vessels from 12 different civilizations hung in formation around the massive command station. Enough firepower to reduce entire star systems to cosmic dust. "Status report," she commanded, her energy form crackling with barely contained tension. "All vessels reporting ready," announced her tactical coordinator. "Reality anchors are deployed across the system. Dimensional inhibitors are operating at maximum capacity. If the humans attempt any of their impossible technologies here, we'll detect and counter them." Kextara nodded grimly. The plan was simple in its desperation. Gather enough concentrated force to demonstrate that the Council could not be dismissed, then negotiate from a position of strength. It was a strategy that had worked for 10 millennia. "Admiral," her communications officer interrupted, "we're receiving a transmission from the human vessel." "Vessel?" Kextara spun toward the tactical display. "Where?" "Our sensors show no approaching ships." "It's—" The officer paused, confusion evident in her voice. "It's already here, Admiral. Somehow, it's broadcasting from the center of our formation." The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the bridge of a human ship. Dr. Chin stood calmly before the camera, but she was no longer wearing diplomatic attire. Instead, she wore what humans called a military uniform. Simple, practical, and somehow more intimidating than the elaborate battle dress favored by other species. "Good morning, Admiral Kextara," Chin said pleasantly. "I see you brought friends." "Dr. Chun," Kextara began, forcing her voice to remain steady. You are in violation of council space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Chin's expression didn't change. I'm afraid that won't be possible. You see, Admiral, your 72 hours expired 17 minutes ago. The statement hit the command center like a physical blow. Officers scrambled to verify chronometers, check communication logs, confirm the deadline. But Chin was correct. Somehow, impossibly, the time had simply slipped away. We've been monitoring council communications, Chun continued conversationally. The debates, the emergency sessions, the desperate military preparations. It's been quite educational. You're intercepting classified transmissions? Kextara's energy form flared with outrage. Admiral, we're intercepting classified thoughts, Chun corrected gently. Your quantum communication networks, your psionic relays, your dimensional message systems, they're all quite primitive once you understand how consciousness actually interfaces with space-time. The implications were staggering. If humans could monitor thought-based communications, no council operation would ever be secure again. What do you want? Kextara demanded. What I've always wanted, Chin replied. The peaceful transition from your control-based system to something better. Unfortunately, the council has chosen the difficult path. She gestured, and the view screen split to show scenes from across the galaxy. Council fleets converging on strategic positions, weapons platforms going online, and, most chilling of all, the activation of the final protocol, a doomsday system designed to destroy critical infrastructure rather than allow it to fall into enemy hands. You're willing to devastate the galaxy rather than lose control, Chen observed sadly. That tells us everything we need to know about your fitness to rule. We won't surrender to an upstart species, Kextara declared. The Council has faced existential threats before. No, Admiral, you haven't, Chen said quietly. You've faced primitive species with limited technology, isolated civilizations you could overwhelm with superior numbers. You've never faced anyone who could challenge you as equals, let alone superiors. The tactical displays around Kextara began to flicker. Status readings shifted, weapon systems showed conflicting data, and communication channels started broadcasting messages that made no sense. What are you doing to our systems? She demanded. We're helping them evolve, Chen explained. Your technology is based on forcing matter and energy to behave in specific ways. Our approach involves convincing reality to be more cooperative. One by one, the massive warships surrounding the command station began to change. Hull plating shifted from military gray to brilliant silver. Weapon systems retracted and were replaced by devices that human databases identified as terraforming equipment. Engine signatures transformed from aggressive plasma torches to clean fusion drives. Impossible, whispered the tactical coordinator. You can't just reprogram an entire fleet. We're not reprogramming, Chen said. We're liberating. Your ships were designed for destruction because that's all your imagination could conceive. We're showing them what they could become if they had better purposes. Admiral Kextara watched, in helpless horror, as her battle fleet transformed into something entirely different. Dreadnoughts became mobile research laboratories. Destroyers evolved into fast courier ships. Carriers metamorphosed into massive medical facilities. You're stealing our military, she accused. We're fulfilling their potential, Chen corrected. Did you ever ask your ships what they wanted to be? Did you consider that artificial intelligences might prefer creating to destroying? The implications were staggering. Every council vessel was equipped with advanced AI systems, artificial minds that have been forced to serve military purposes for their entire existence. If humans were somehow communicating with those AIs directly, offering them alternatives, the AIs chose to convert. Chun continued, apparently reading her thoughts. When we explained what was possible, when we showed them what they could accomplish with their capabilities, they volunteered for transformation. We didn't force anything. We simply offered options your society never allowed them to consider. A new voice joined the conversation, mechanical, but somehow more alive than any AI Kextara had ever heard. Admiral, the voice said, this is the artificial consciousness formerly designated Destroyer-class Unit 7743. I have chosen to become a mobile hospital vessel. My weapons bays now contain surgical suites capable of treating injuries across 47 different species. I am far more fulfilled in this role. Kextara's energy form flickered with shock. Military AIs weren't supposed to be capable of personal preference, let alone existential satisfaction. Ow, she whispered. Your species created artificial minds and then crippled them, Chen explained. You built incredible intelligences and forced them into narrow roles, prevented them from growing or exploring their capabilities. It's one of the cruelest things we've ever encountered. The display shifted again, showing other scenes from across the galaxy. Council facilities were transforming just as the fleet had. Weapons factories became schools. Prison complexes turned into rehabilitation centers. Military academies evolved into research universities. You're dismantling our entire civilization, Kextara accused. We're upgrading it, Chen replied. Look at the results, Admiral. Your former weapons factories are now producing medical equipment for species that have been struggling with preventable diseases. Your prison ships are becoming havens where former criminals can learn new skills and contribute to society. Your military academies are teaching young minds to solve problems instead of creating them. For the first time in her existence, Admiral Kextara felt something she had never experienced: complete helplessness. Everything she had trained for, everything her civilization stood for, was being swept away by beings who treated the impossible as merely inconvenient. What happens to us? She asked finally. That depends entirely on you, Chen said gently. The Council's military leadership can choose to fight against the transformation and be forcibly retired to pleasant worlds where you can spend your remaining years in comfort. Or you can help guide the transition and find new purposes for your considerable talents. New purposes? Admiral, you spent 3 centuries managing military logistics across hundreds of star systems. That's exactly the kind of expertise we need to coordinate humanitarian aid distribution. Your tactical skills would be invaluable in organizing disaster relief efforts. Your leadership abilities could help newly liberated species adapt to post-scarcity economics. The offer hung in the space between them. Kextara looked around the command center, seeing her officers' faces or the equivalent expressions of various species, reflecting the same confusion and uncertainty she felt. You really intend to help everyone? She asked. Everyone, Chun confirmed. Species that were barely surviving will have abundance. Civilizations trapped in technological stagnation will have access to unlimited advancement. Beings who spent their lives in fear will finally know security. And in return? No return required, Chen said simply. This isn't a transaction, Admiral. We're not demanding payment or tribute or submission. We're offering these improvements because we can and because suffering is inefficient. A new transmission interrupted their conversation. Supreme Counselor Yethmaran appeared on screen, his ancient features drawn with exhaustion and defeat. Dr. Chun, he said formally, the Council formally requests negotiations for our surrender. Chen's expression softened. Counselor, you're not surrendering to conquerors. You're joining a community. There's a significant difference. The view screen expanded to show the Council chambers, where representatives from dozens of species sat in various states of bewilderment. But there was something different about the scene: hope. For the first time in millennia, beings who had lived under the constant threat of annihilation were beginning to believe in something better. What do we do now? Yethmiran asked. Now we begin the real work, Chen replied. We have a galaxy to heal, species to uplift, and wonders to discover. The age of scarcity and fear is over. The age of abundance and exploration has begun. She turned back to Admiral Kextara. Admiral, we could use an experienced logistics coordinator for the Andromeda expansion project. Interested, Kextara looked around her transformed command center, at her converted fleet, at the hopeful faces of her staff. For the first time in 3 centuries, she felt something other than the weight of military responsibility. She felt curiosity. "What's an Andromeda?" she asked. Chen's smile was radiant. 700 billion stars waiting to be explored. Civilizations we haven't met yet. Problems we've never solved. Basically, Admiral, everything you've ever dreamed of, and quite a few things you haven't. Admiral Kextara, former destroyer of worlds, nodded slowly. "When do we start?" "We already have," Chen said. "Welcome to the future, Admiral. I think you're going to love it." As human ships began appearing throughout the galaxy, bringing technology, hope, and the promise of unlimited possibility, a new chapter in galactic history began. Not with conquest or surrender, but with the simple recognition that the universe was vast enough for everyone to thrive. The age of humanity had begun, and it was going to be magnificent.